Hello, this is Joe Peters from MOMFIT with Joe Peters. Uh, I have a special guest, Eduardo.
Shoot.
He is my amazing TV producer, and he was helping me with some technical issues because that is what happened with moms and the mom life. So this is Joe Peters from your show, Mumfit with Joe. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network and Her Network on Single TV channels 250 and 251. Please remember to download both the Single TV app on the respective app stores in iOS and Android devices. While you are downloading, make sure to rate and leave a comment. The app is free. Single TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, and Fire TV Stick. Roku and Roku Stick also are on all the smart TVs since 2016. Welcome to today's show. We had some technical issues, so our special guest for today had to actually be rescheduled in 2 weeks. So stay tuned in 2 weeks to actually learn from a wise woman that is going to be sharing with us about intuition. And today we are going to be talking about a very important topic for all of you moms and moms to be. And that topic is the topic of getting clear about your boundaries. And this is one of my favorite topics because it's one that I hear moms all the time sharing on high level of frustration, high level of stress, and don't knowing how to handle it, don't know how to approach it, don't know how to share with others that they need to respect their boundaries in a kind, loving manner. And some of us are also people pleasers. And that just put another layer in the equation because we don't want to make people upset. We don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. And today, what we're going to be talking is several things. Why is important to have a boundary, and why is important even more when we have our baby and when we are pregnant and having our baby? Who needs to be around us to have healthy boundaries? And then how we can, in a kind, loving, matter, set up for success with boundaries. Then, so are you ready? Let's start. The first part of the process is why is now more important than ever. So, if you are one of those moms that always have boundaries on and is always being very clear on your boundaries and sharing your boundaries, congratulations, mama. I am proud of you. That is the best gift that you can give to your baby starting now. And if in the past, mama, you struggle putting boundaries, you struggle setting your healthy boundaries, you struggle asking people to respect your boundaries, what I want you to think about is everything that you do, even since the moment that you are pregnant, even since the moment that you realize at 5 weeks that you were pregnant, everything that you do um, impact and start creating memory, muscle memory in your baby. And I know because I'm a mom too that one of the things that we want the most, more than anything else in life, is to make sure that our babies had the most wonderful life. And part of having that wonderful life is that they be able and learn that it's okay to set boundaries, that it's okay to have clear limits, to share with people how we expect to be treated, how we deserve to be treated, and then how and when we are going to actually allow that boundary to move or not move. And that could be challenging. I will tell you a story of mine. I struggle a lot with saying no. And when I was younger, that caused me a lot of problems because sometimes I will have different friends inviting me to different events. And it was so hard for me to say no that I end double booking, triple booking myself, and then I will end rushing and running and being stressed, getting late everywhere. And at the end, everybody was upset with me because everybody was waiting for me because I was trying to be in two, three places at the same time. And then one day, I decided that the first thing that I need to do to hold healthy boundaries was learning to say no. And this is the first exercise that I want you to do today. I want you to actually write this down. Every time that you say yes to others, you are saying no to yourself. And every time that you say no to others, you are saying yes to yourself. And I want you to see it like that. So you can stop thinking that saying no is something bad, something not nice to do. Actually, every time that you say no to others, you are saying yes to you. You are saying yes to your time. You are saying yes to your well being. You are saying yes to your health. You are saying yes to your emotions. So for every no that you had outside, you have several yeses, yeses for you. And you are worth it, and you are valuable, and your baby is valuable. So what I did was I decided that I was going to have a 1 year of no. And what that game was, I choose to, for a year, say no to the most simple things, things that were not a big deal, things that were not, that I didn't feel that I was disappointing people. But whenever people ask me about simple things, then I choose that for 1 year, my answer will be always no. So, for example, if my mom invite me to the salon to make my nails, then I will say no, thank you. Not because I didn't want to, but because I was practicing to say no. More than practicing to say no, I was practicing to feel comfortable saying no. Some of you actually remember, and we've been talking about this, about repetition, and that there is a phrase that says that repetition is the mother of all skills. So don't put pressure on yourself that suddenly, magically, one day to another, you're going to actually learn to say no and say no all the time and feel good about it. I want you to show yourself kindness and grace and know that it's a process that you need to learn. It's a process that you need to practice. You need to actually be able to feel confident saying no, feeling confident executing that journey of what you are going to say and how you're going to say it. So the first one is that I don't think that you need to do a year, but I will encourage you to actually think every week, what are some of those simple things that you could say no without feeling a lot of guilt and shame? And that is important because these two emotions, guilt and shame, are two emotions that have a lot of control over us. And they can take over our emotional well being and make us do and say things that we really don't want to and that we really don't mean to. They are two very powerful emotions that time after that time are being used to actually manipulate us and make us do things the way that others want. So, if they trigger guilt or shame, the chance for us to do something that we don't want is a lot higher. So, I want you to sit down this week with yourself, do a couple of breathings, and actually start questioning and being curious about how do you feel about guilt and shame, and who in your life triggers guilt and shame. And then if you don't have anybody in your life that trigger guilt and shame, then you are one of the lucky ones, mama. And then maybe you are one that don't have anybody else to trigger guilt and shame but yourself. You are all the time allowing guilt and shame to be in your head and then acting from that perspective. Or like it was for me and it's for so many mamas, you have close family and close friends that actually use that guilt and shame to not respect your boundaries. And that is what we are working today is helping you to make that muscle a little stronger so you feel confident on your boundaries. Why you need to feel confident on your boundaries? I was actually doing a little reel yesterday for my social media, talking with moms about this top secret about motherhood. And this top secret about motherhood is motherhood don't come with a manual, don't come with instructions. And what that means, you're going to be like, yo, Joa, of course doesn't come with instructions. Why that's important? That's important because every single time that you get advice, comments, suggestions about what to do with your baby, what to do with your pregnancy, they are not absolute. They are just their opinion. And their opinion is based on their own perspectives and their own experience. So, and then from there, the other one that is very powerful for all of you mamas, and I want you to listen to me on this one. Sometimes we hear a lot that the goal is not the end destination, but the journey, and that there is not such a thing as perfection, but progress. And that takes a whole new level of meaning when we are doing motherhood because doesn't matter how much you try, doesn't matter how much you study, how much you prepare, how much you dedicate into really researching and feeling good about the decision that you are making is the best decision for your baby. There is going to be always, always at least one person that doesn't agree with you, at least one person that want to push back, at least one person that want to hit that guilt and that shame to actually reflect on you their own discomfort. And why that is so powerful for all of you, why that is my gift to you today. Because when you know that, you're a lot more relaxed about it. And then you stop caring. You keep listening, but then now you start using a filter where you actually put everything that you receive through a filter, and then you choose what it works and you choose what you can do, and then you can choose what you can just dump in the trash because then you know that that don't matter how much you try, there is going to be always an opposite, and that is a big gift for all of you mamas because society, social media, sometimes our family, our friends are brainwashing us with that idea that we need to be the perfect mom. And the definition of a perfect mom, because I always tell you that you are the perfect mom for your baby. And I truly believe that. My problem with the perfect mom is how we add attributes to what being a perfect mom is. And those attributes are becoming something unreachable, impossible to get. And because of that, we are able to we are not able to enjoy our motherhood. We are not able to enjoy our journey. That is why we have so much depression and anxiety and OCD and all these mood disorders because moms are literally drowning by themselves trying to be the perfect mom, trying to match what they see their friends post in social media, trying to match what the stars are showing in the magazines, trying to match what the TV and the movies are showing as what a mom has to be. Because the reality is nobody share the mistakes, nobody share the struggles, nobody share the dark times. And that is why it's so important that we as moms start since we are pregnant to practice to put boundaries. on ourselves and our babies. I always say, I want to be the coach that you need, not the coach that you want. People are going to treat you like you allow them to treat you. People are going to cross boundaries that are not firm, and they're going to cross boundaries if they know that you allow them to cross the boundary. And I know that that's scary, especially as a people pleaser, because at that moment you start thinking, what if I put the boundary and they walk away and they stop loving me and they stop accepting me? And the reality is that itself is a gift for you to understand that people love and people care and people acceptance should never be attached to not respecting your boundaries, to do what they want instead of what you want. Because I will tell you another big secret, mama. Your only two jobs in life since the moment that you get pregnant are taking care of your baby and taking care of yourself. And this may sound rough and this may sound hard, but other people's emotions are not your problem, are not your business, are not your responsibility. And that is important because that is something that I truly believe that we need to teach our children. We need to teach our children that other people's emotions are not their responsibility. I know how many times we see grandparents or aunts or uncles saying to kids, oh, or even moms and dads, oh, you made me sad. That you did made me sad. I am sad because you are not giving me a hug. You are breaking my heart. And the reality is that is not the baby's responsibility. That is not the child's responsibility. And the best way that you can actually model that so that your baby don't grow up to be a people pleaser and your baby don't grow up thinking that other people's responsibilities, other people's feelings are his or her responsibilities is if you do the same. If you don't take ownership on other people's responsibilities. And mama, I'm not saying that this is a free way for you to be rude or to be unkind, because I also believe that those crossing boundaries 90% of the time come from a good place, from a place of people that love you and want to help. Sometimes they just don't know how to help. So you can hold those boundaries with a kind, loving manner. And then if that creates an emotion in the other person, a reaction in the other person, then know that that is not your responsibility, that that's not your fault. Each person reacts based on their own wounds and their own issues. And that is part of the gift of holding a space and having a mature adult relationship. So, how you're going to start finding what boundaries you need to put. I'm going to talk about four topics in motherhood that are usually the most critical ones with boundaries. The first one is your birth. And it's very important if you are a mom to be that you start paying attention to your birth. We are going to actually be having another episode where we are talking only about birth. And that is important because every person had a different birth experience. And if somebody had a traumatic birth experience, they are going to share from that trauma. They're going to share from that fear. They're going to share from that perspective. If somebody had a long, exhausting birth, they're going to share from there. And that is the first boundary that I want you to create. I want you to write this down. What are my boundaries about birth? And the first thing that we do to create a healthy boundary is we research and we prepare ourselves. We investigate, we learn, We dedicate time to actually see the options, and then from there we choose what is the best option for us and our baby. There are so many options for birth, mom. And I will tell you something, there is not one better than the other one. There is not one that is smarter than another one, like some people try to to say that some birds are smarter. They are not birds that are smarter than others. They are all the options are just that, options that will help you to go from point A to point B. Options that will help you to go from pregnant to hold your baby in your arms. But if you research and look, and then we were talking about this last week on one of the 10 tips to thrive in your pregnancy, your intuition. If you hear your intuition and tap into what of those options feel good for you, then you now have your boundary. And now the next step is how to hold that boundary and how to ask people to respect that boundary. We're going to talk about that next, but we're going to be talking about the four things that I believe are the critical ones for you to have a clear boundary of what do you want, what you don't want, and how you want it and why. The first one is birth. The second one is breastfeeding or feeding your baby. And that is you have several choices. You have the choice to breastfeed, you have the choice to pump exclusively and feed your baby with a bottle. You have the option to do formula. You have the option to do a mix of any of those three. So again, you have a lot of options. And breastfeeding is one that create a lot of hate and pushback because it's very personal. And when things are very personal to our heart, and we see a different opinion, it's very easy for us to feel threat. And when we feel threat, we react strong, we react fearfully. Actually, I have a beautiful example with this because one of the things that I do is in my social media, I keep posting short videos encouraging moms to breastfeed and feel confident and confident of breastfeeding in public, because I truly believe that breastfeeding is natural, is beautiful, is our baby's right. And I truly believe that we should not be worrying about having to go to a bathroom or a car to actually feed our babies. And just recently, I had a video that had over 250 comments and over 60,000 views. And the majority of the comments were other moms shaming me for choosing to feed my baby in public without covering. And it's important that you have since now start thinking about that, because that is going to happen to you too. You are going to have opinions about, oh, if you're breastfeeding, it's okay, but you should be breastfeeding this way. You should be breastfeeding this way. Oh, you are breastfeeding for too long. Oh, it's going to be a lot easier for you to just go to formula if you are struggling with, for example, postpartum depression. You're going to have all these bubbles of information during the fourth trimester when you are going to be very sensitive and very hormonal. And that is why it's important that you have that clear boundary since the beginning. What is what I want to do? What I want to do, what I don't want to do, how I want to do it, and why. So, in feeding your baby, what are the options feel good for you? What are the options feel like supporting of the mom that you want to be and your baby? And choose that one and investigate, research, educate yourself on that one that you choose to do. So, birth, feeding your baby. The third topic is sleep, your baby sleep. And here you have several options as well. And there is a huge range of opinions around sleep for a baby. We're going to do another episode about that when I will be sharing what I believe and what I search and what I learn. But that one had also several options. You have the option to respond to your baby every time that your baby needs. You have the option to create different techniques to help your baby to sleep by himself, to sleep with you. And the important thing with the sleep is that you understand the entire picture of the sleep from the developing perspective of the baby, from your perspective, and then for the perspective of both of you in a relationship. And again, after you decide what option you want to have, then get very familiar with that option, why you're having that option, what are the benefits. We were talking in one of the previous episodes about brain. Do you remember brain? The acronym, checking for the benefits, checking for the results, for the risk, checking for alternatives, checking for what your intuition is saying, and checking for what will happen if we don't do anything, if we do nothing, for the end of brain. So in that one is have clear do's. What are the benefits and the risk and the alternatives of every option? That is not an absolute. And you, especially if you're a first time mom, you're going to be like maybe a little overwhelmed saying, well, Joa, but I don't know. I'm a first time mom. There is so much information. And that is what I want you to stop, research, and allow yourself to sit with information, to actually start feeling and working on that muscle of intuition to understand what feels better for you and your baby. So that is the third one. Then the fourth one is the boundaries about how to handle a newborn. And this one is also very tricky because depending on your culture, depending on your level of anxiety, and depending on the of your family and your in-laws, this could be a very tricky one. I will tell you my own experience. When my baby came, I had several issues with my milk production. My baby did not gain enough weight the first week, so we had to supplement. And because of that, I developed some postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety. And I was in a very dark place. And part of that anxiety and that depression was me trying to make sure that my baby was safe. Unfortunately, the mamas that had their babies during the pandemic had that part even stronger because we felt even more vulnerable because we were actually scared not only about everything else about the newborn, but this serious illness that could actually affect a newborn. So, in my experience, I was very clear about my boundary. My boundary was I didn't want anybody in my house for the first 2 weeks because I want to have this time with my husband and my baby. Then, after those 2 weeks, I want everybody that was in contact with my baby to wear a mask. And this was not only because of the pandemic, because of the COVID. This one was also because when I researched, there is something that is called RSV, a respiratory virus. And that RSV in adults is just another cold. If an adult had RSV, it will just feel like another cold, feel a little sick, and that's it. But if a baby had RSV, baby can end in a NICU intubated because their lungs and their respiratory system is not strong enough to fight RSV. So because of that, I choose to also say, okay, you need to wear a mask when you're holding my baby. Then the third one was I didn't want anybody to kiss my baby because people had germs in their mouth. So I say no kisses to my baby when he was little. And then the fourth one was if my baby's crying, I want you to bring him back to me. I don't want you to try to be a superhero and trying to soothe my baby and calm my baby down. If my baby's crying and you are not being able to calm him down, I want my baby back. Those were my boundaries for my newborn. And it was hard because I was tired, because I was exhausted, and because people were pushing and family were pushing. And uh, I had some of my close family to have their feelings hurt because of the masks and because I choose to ask for everybody to wear a mask. But with a kind manner, with a respectful manner, I keep putting my boundary and saying, this is how I want you to interact with my baby. I love you, and this is how. This is the minimum that I had for you to interact with my baby. Am I telling you that you need to have those kind of rules for your newborn? No, you may not feel as anxious as I was. But what I want you to know is that if any of that feels good, that is your right to hold those boundaries. Remember what we were talking at the beginning of the show. Your only two jobs are protecting your baby and protecting yourself. So far we have um, birth, breastfeeding, sleeping, and the newborn. Those are the four topics that I will highly encourage you to learn and choose as much as possible. Why that is important? Because the next thing that you're going to do is put up your boundaries. And there is something that I was talking, giving a class last week. I know that in English doesn't make a lot of sense, but in Spanish, we have a saying that says, el que pega primero pega doble. And that means whoever punch first, punch twice. And I'm not telling you to punch anybody with your boundaries, but what I'm telling you is you need to be in a proactive space when you are setting your boundaries. You need to be in a ahead of the game perspective. If you have your boundaries in your mind and you don't share them early enough, and somebody break the boundary, then there is already conflict because somebody already break the boundary. You are not feeling comfortable with that action, and then you have to now address not only the boundary, but you need to address the boundary, pointing out that they broke the boundary, that they didn't knew that exist. So it is important that after you have clear your boundaries and then you research about them and understand, that you start sharing them with the people around you as soon as possible, with your team. I keep telling you over and over and over and again that you need to create a team around you that is created from your partner, your spouse, your in-laws, your family, your medical team, your doula, your lactation consultant, your MOMFIT coach. Uh, Those are the people that you need to start sharing your boundaries. And I want you to invite you to share those boundaries as soon as possible. Don't wait until the fourth trimester. Don't wait until 1 week before you are giving birth to actually share your boundaries. Another big boundary around birth that I see a lot of times are mom and mother in law wanting to be in the hospital at the moment that the baby is born. And I know for me, the case was that's not an option. I just want to be with my husband on that moment. I just want this to be our sacred time. I know that there are some moms that cannot think about giving birth with other mother, but that is important that you start thinking about those things and create your boundaries and start communicating them. One of the best ways to communicate them is first, make sure that you communicate them when you are actually in a good, positive mood. Never communicate a boundary when you are upset. Never communicate a boundary when you are triggered. Never communicate a boundary when you are not feeling centered. Second, start by appreciating the other person and appreciating how important that person is for you. Remember, we were talking about you're communicating these boundaries to your team, to the team that is going to support you and your baby in the marathon of motherhood. So if they are part of your team, if they are part of your inner circle of your team, that means that they are pretty special. That means that you love them, you appreciate them, and you respect them. So start with that. Start with that point of empathy, of that point of recognizing how valuable they are for you and your baby, how grateful you are, how blessed you feel to actually be able to have them in your team, to actually be able to enjoy with them the journey of raising your baby. 'Cause that is very important. Is the second step of sharing healthy boundaries, because then in that way you are not going to start with a confrontation of is you against me or me against you, because it's never like that. It's always us together. It's always me and my team working together as a team to thrive in this marathon of motherhood, to thrive on this journey of being a mom. So you share from that, and then I want you to start with how what you did as a research, what you learn, what you investigate, what you get exposed to, and just have it as a conversation and say, "Hey, I just want to let you know that for the last couple of weeks or months, I'm been working a lot in learning about different options for birth, and it was fascinating everything that I learned. One of the things that I learned was that," and then you can share some of those clear positives that are there for the choice that you choose for your boundary. And then that is going to engage that other person and say, "Oh, wow, that is very cool. That's nice." Say, "Yeah. And because of that, I decide that this is how I want to handle birth." And yes, that is very cool. And because of that, that is why I decide that this is how I want to handle feeding my baby. Yeah. And that is why I decide that this is the way that I want to handle um, my baby sleep. Because in that way, you are not allowing any room for anybody to label you as hormonal, emotional, irrational, not being humble to learn from older moms. You are actually putting yourself as a loving, caring mom that is being doing her diligence, that is being learning about the pros and the cons of different options, and then as a mom is being able to actually make a choice. And at that point, the the most magical part is when you do it in this order, then people in the other side are actually open and receptive to learn and to support you. And then the last part of sharing the boundary is involve them. Say, then how I usually say it is, this is very important for me, and this is how you can help me with this. And just have one or two things that you can actually ask them to help you with, that you can actually ask them to support you with. I will give you a brief example. When I was giving birth, one of my boundaries for birth was I didn't want to have intervention if was not absolutely needed. And I knew based on what I study and research that a lot of times the percentage is really high, that interventions are made not when they are completely needed, but before when they are needed. Because sometimes that is the easiest path for the doctor and the medical staff. And I was concerned about that. And I want to make sure I was not saying that I didn't want interventions, because my baby's health and priority was the first thing. My baby's health and life was the first priority. But I want to make sure that was the must, that there was not other option. And I also knew that my husband don't like confrontation much. So I knew that if the time came, my husband will not feel comfortable pushing to a doctor, pushing to a midwife. So what I did was I used this that I just shared with you, this part of the how to share the boundaries, and I asked my doula about it. I said, "This is what I found. This is what is important for me, and this is why I choose to do this, and this is how I need your help. I need your help because I know that there's going to be a time that my husband will not be feel comfortable pushing back, and hopefully I will be clear enough in my mind that I will be able to speak for myself and push." And if that is not the case, I really need you to help me and be my voice and help me to talk with the doctors to give me time to actually discuss with my husband and with you. And that is something that normally doulas don't do, because normally doulas don't talk directly with the staff, with the medical staff. Doulas usually talk with you and you talk with the medical staff. But because I was creating that boundary with that loving care perspective, I was actually able to touch her heart, and then she was willing to be on board with the situation. And actually, during birth, when um, the midwife tried to suggest that I had to start pushing, and I say the first time that I didn't want to, and then the midwife try again, then she knew my boundary. She knew that she was part of my team. She knew that I asked her specifically how she could help me with this boundary. So she took action and asked the midwife, do we have any reason why she cannot wait? As she's asking us to wait right now because she doesn't feel ready to push. And that was a very powerful moment in my birth experience. That was possible because I was able to prepare myself and prepare my boundaries enough to actually have them clear, have them communicated properly, and then, very important, inviting the people in my team to be part of the boundary, because that is one of the mistakes that a lot of people make, and is that make a boundary like, sometimes people think about boundaries as a wall, and the issue with having a boundary as a wall is a wall will separate you from them. If you think about it, if you have a wall here, people in this side will not be able to see people in this side. So instead of a wall, we want to see the boundaries as a container that is permeable, a container that allow people to come in. You don't need to hold yourself alone with your boundaries. You can hold your boundaries as a container and then invite people to join you there. I will repeat this to you again. People in your team love you. People in your team want the best for you and your baby. People in your team are looking for ways to support you. Sometimes they just don't know the best way. So instead of letting them roll the dice and try to figure out how they can support you better, and that sometimes that is implying breaking your own boundaries, help them to understand that they can actually support you with your boundaries, and share with them how they can support you. Share with them how important your boundaries are and why it's important for them to actually do it and thrive with it. Make sense? I hope so. And this is one of the most powerful things that you as a mom can do. This is one of the most empowering and strong things that you as a mom, especially as a first time mom, can do to make sure that you save unnecessary stress, that you save unnecessary tears, that you save unnecessary anxiety. Remember, being proactive. So create your boundaries and make sure that you share them in a kind, loving way, so that um, you are able to. It's almost like in Colombia we also have another saying. I think that this one translates better to English, and it's like, bees are attracted with honey. So instead of using your boundaries as a confrontation and a wall between you and your team, use your boundaries as honey to actually have advocates for your boundary. It's going to be a lot easier for you if you have your boundary and it's not only you the one using it, but you also have the people that can do it with you. So with that being said, look for the for the boundaries, share them and share with me when you have them. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish Radio Network. Please check out http spanglishworld.ca for all the news and programming. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it.